Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Rob McKeefery, and this is episode number 323. I want to thank you guys for listening each week. Really appreciate those of you that like, share, comment. Just helps us continue to highlight the great people we have in our profession. Also want to thank our sponsor, Train Heroic, for bringing these episodes to you for free. Only partner with companies that I believe in both the people and the product. And I think the world of the guys at Train Heroic, and they also have a fantastic product. So if you're in the market, check them out. If not, just let them know how much you appreciate them being part of the show. This week, I'm joined by an old buddy of mine, Jason Novak. He's the head of physical conditioning down at IMG Academy in Florida. But we go back, way back, NFL days. He was at the Titans, and a guy that I've learned from when it comes to a lot of things, but kettlebells being one of the main things. But just one of the all-time great guys in our profession. So, man, super excited that you're on the show.
Ron, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Jay, like I mentioned the Titans. You've been at Central Michigan. You're down at IMG now. You had some stops along the way. I think you had your own facility at one point even. Which stop best prepared you for your current role?
Honestly, the one that I would say without a doubt when I was at Alabama State University. And it was just a unique experience. We bought a grocery store on the edge of campus. They let us turn the grocery store into a weight room. And the kids there, just so appreciative of having somebody to work with them. It was just a great experience. It was starting from the ground up. The coaches were bought in, and it was just a blast. I stay in touch with a lot of those guys still to this day. And I left there in 2002. And that was the one where you were a one-stop shop and you had to figure it out and be very creative with money and things like that. And it was just fun, and I didn't know any better than all the things that I was doing wrong. And we just did them full speed and look back later and see what we changed. But I just loved that job. It was great and a great way to start.
Were you their first strength coach?
They had one before that was a former player and the role of running the weight room. And then a new head coach came in, L.C. Cole, and he had played at Nebraska and big believer in strength and conditioning. And so he had a strength coach with him at his previous stop that stayed and didn't come with him. And so I got offered the job over the phone, and he got me so fired up about that place. I was like, man, if I don't take this job, I'm missing out. And so I blurted it out, I'll take the job when you want me. And I showed up with my U-Haul behind my truck, and it was amazing. And I had such a great time there. And like I said, the kids made it everything. They were so good to work with and worked so hard. And they were just all about the training and just trying stuff. They were all in. And it was very easy to work there. And I loved it. Very proud of being there.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson. I think something that we've talked about on the show quite a bit is, everybody chases the logo early on, right, in their career. And but to really develop like the best, being at NFL Europe and having two garages as my weight room, or being in, South Florida in the early stages and had a 2,000 square foot weight room, and everybody come through and, essentially starting a program. Those were the times where you had to figure it out. Like you had to be resourceful, and you had to, you couldn't rely on, a lot of resources being thrown at you, and so, I would encourage anybody listening, look for opportunities that other people don't want or that don't exist yet, and make that. And then, again, that's when you have a career that goes to the Titans and Central Michigan, now at IMG and all that.
I agree totally with that.
Along the way, we all make mistakes, and you're one of the most humble guys I know in the profession. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've made and how you've learned from it?
Okay. I knew you were going to ask me this, and so I've really been thinking a lot, and I was like, I could probably eat up 5 shows of all the mistakes I've made. And so be happy to share those with anybody. But I think the biggest one is when I first started out, I really was, it's all about the X's and O's, and I'm going to dive in and learn the X's and O's. And that's really, if I really hone in on that, I'm going to be a great strength coach, and I'm going to have everything figured out. And I've gone along with this. I've realized, and I wish I'd have learned it earlier, that having a background in learning, the quote unquote business of strength and conditioning the last few years at Central Michigan, I always encouraged all of our interns, you need to go find out, marketing, finance, business, management, because ultimately this is really a people business, and the X's and O's of it is hugely important. But we're all in situations now where we have to manage budgets. We have to be creative with fundraising and financing. We have to sell ourselves to coaches and administrators. We have to sell ourselves to parents for recruits. And then we ultimately have to sell ourselves on interviews. And there's so much business side to this that I think that those could really help somebody with. And I wish I'd have learned that earlier. And I feel like it was something I didn't spend a lot of time on in the early stages of my career that I've really tried to emphasize to people now is, man, learn the people side, learn how to manage people and money, and learn how to sell what you do and show the value that you bring to whatever job you have, because sometimes we kind of have to sell our value of like not just being the weights coach, you know? And I think that's huge if you can do that, because it's going to open a lot of doors for people if they have that ability, which I did not have when I was younger.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I wrote a whole book on the idea of that, right?
Absolutely.
You have that you develop yourself in all three of those areas, right? Being a great technician, but being a great manager and being an entrepreneur. And
100%.
Forward thinking and constantly sharpening the sword. That doesn't mean being an internet guru or something, but
right.
I think, you've got to learn to play the game. And it kind of goes back to what's that movie with My Cousin Vinny with Joe Pesci.
Yeah, with Joe Pesci, Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, what's an expert, right? It's just somebody that knows more than everybody else in the room on a particular topic, right? And that's what, yes, invest, learn, all those types of things. But you really, at the end of the day, you just got to be the smartest guy in the room when it comes to strength and conditioning. But all those other factors are what's going to help you get jobs and keep jobs, and
absolutely.
So I could agree with you more. We talked, you've been at the, Alabama States of the world. You've been at the Titans. You've been, Central Michigan, now to IMG, all these different levels. Talk a little bit about what you've learned about the different levels of strength and conditioning.
I think probably the biggest common denominator, the two that I would find are this. One, across the board, the people that are successful at either of those levels in this game, the athletes, they're so driven. Like they just kind of jump off the page to you, and they kind of stand out like a sore thumb, that you can just tell the driven people in the room. And we as coaches, we tend to gravitate to them because they're a lot of times the funnest to coach. And I think that's been the common thread among, you can pick kids out here that it's, with the high school academy, at different levels of college and the NFL, there's just certain folks that are at a different level than everybody else around them as far as the drive that they have and to be good and to be great. So that's a big one that was common to me. And then I think another one is ultimately, regardless of if they're being paid to play or if they're just getting their start athletically, like here at IMG, the biggest thing that I've found that they just want the same consistent person all the time. And I think that's gone a long way as far as that in different areas of the building, they end up, we're the ones that don't control their playing time. But if they want it, we can help them get it. And if they have it, we'll help them keep it. And I've always tried to approach it like that, listen, if they can get the same guy every day and your goals are my goals and we stay on that relationship, it's really a great way to work with people and have them, put their best efforts out there, because it's not a judgment. You're not judging them. You're just trying to get them and help them go where they want to go. And in the NFL, it was, man, you're trying to help them stay where they want to stay, because it was all about time there. And but I thought that was a common thread, which was unique to me. It's a 15, 16-year-old kid and a 35-year-old vet that's just trying to hang on for another year or two. And so I learned that from Steve, man, at the Titans, Watterson. be the same guy all the time. It didn't matter win or loss, happy or sad. He was the same guy for 30 something years there. And the players really respected that. And I was like, I took a lot from him, but that's one that I was like, I got to make sure I don't forget that.
100%. Yeah, I could agree with you more. What do you think? I mean, just to add to that, what do you think professionally? Like like going back to that, every strength coach kind of chasing the logos and stuff. I mean, there'd be somebody that's young that's listening to this saying, I mean, Jason, why'd you ever leave the Titans? Why aren't you going back to the NFL instead of being at a high school? What have you learned professionally about, it's not really about the levels, is it?
No, it wasn't. The funny thing is like I mentioned Alabama State, which maybe a lot of listeners have not even heard of that school. Everybody would know the Titans, and a lot of folks, obviously know ING. And I'm no happier at any of those places because of the logo on my shirt. But what really gets you going and keeps you coming back are the people that you get to work with on your staff and the athletes. And then also, too, which is critically important, the people you get to work for. And so, because that can make or break you in this industry by being miserable to go to work or not being their guy, right? And so to me, it was more about the people. And I just view it as, sometimes you really just wanted the opportunities to really get your hands dirty and get to do a lot. And so sometimes we chase a logo and we coach one exercise for an entire semester because we're an intern. Or we go to a really small place that nobody's ever heard of, and you get to coach an entire team because nobody else has time for them, and you're willing to dive in.
Right.
And so what an experience that would be to be able to have that opportunity at such a young age. And so that was fortunate for me, as I was kind of thrown in that situation when I first started out. And I got to work with women's soccer at Stephen F. Austin because nobody else worked with them. And I was like, man, I was so proud they're my team, and here we go. And I trained them just like a football team and didn't know any better. And but they were mine, and I loved it. And so I think that when people, if they can look for those opportunities to, man, just get the experience and make the mistakes and learn from them and just get your hands dirty with it. And it'll take you a long way with this because, the connections and all that'll come down the road as you get older. But, man, just get going. Jump in where you can get in and go.
Great. So now you've gone through those levels, right? But that 16-year-old is quite a bit different than that 24-year-old NFL football player, right? What have you learned about coaching the youth athlete in your current role?
Probably my two biggest takeaways. One, this famous saying, right? Keep the main thing the main thing. Ultimately, they have to learn to move. It has to be developmentally appropriate for where they are. And I think that we sometimes make a mistake because there'll be a superpower athlete come in that's 6'5", 200 and whatever pounds and looks like a grown adult. But between the ears, they're still 13, 14, 15 years old. The hips, knees, ankles, shoulders are still a teenager. And our tendency sometimes is to go right to the tip of the pyramid and give them the latest, greatest, hardest, and most advanced. But what they really need is just solid foundational movements that they haven't been exposed to. And so that's been one thing that I've emphasized here is, listen, let's really own the basics, and let's make sure that these kids are really good at the fundamental push, pull, squat, hinge, carry, things like that. And then as it's appropriate, take the step with those that can handle it, but then regress it back. And sometimes you get places and you tend to go right to the fancy because people expect you to do that. And when you get your hands on the athletes, you realize, man, we got to be a lot more basic, and let's own some really basic patterns, and let's just get really good at the small stuff, and then that'll take us a lot farther. Because eventually you're going to pay the debt back if you go too fast.
Sure.
It's going to happen. And so I think that would probably be the biggest one that I've learned. And then, the second part of working with the younger kids and being here with these guys is, how do I say it? Keeping it emphasized on long-term development and helping them be well-rounded. That's what we've really placed an emphasis on here, is exposing them to other things and patterns that they don't see in their sport. Patterns that will make them a better athlete in their sport because we can, show them and expose them to things that they're not getting in whatever sport that they're choosing to play. So we're just trying to balance it out and be fundamentals, right? And with the emphasis on fun. And so that's been a big one for us, is trying to balance out kids and just make sure that they're exposed to a wide array of movement.
I think I would imagine, and using the kettlebells as a tool to do that in some of your regression movements and things along those lines, but then also progressions, obviously.
Yeah.
I know that you have a huge background with kettlebells. I mean, one of the first guys that I knew that was using it in a real effective way at a high level. Talk a little bit about why the kettlebell is such a versatile tool and how you've used it throughout your career.
Okay. It started back some time ago, around 2005, and it just kind of evolved, and it was something that I enjoyed doing. It was fun and challenging and new. And then all of a sudden, it was kind of my way at the Titans to get my foot in the door with the players, because Steve was the guy. If you wanted to, increase bench squat clean, he's who you're going to. But what I did was I set it on the side of the weight room, and a guy would, "What's that thing?" And I'd say, "Well, let me show you a couple things." And then they'd love it. And then the next day, he'd be like, "Hey, man, you got to have Jay show you that stuff." And so then I had 2, and it came to 4 and 8 and 12 and grew from there. And then it became a deal where we saw that it wasn't, the funny thing that we always talked about was everybody's, "Hey, do you do kettlebells?" And we always say, you don't do barbells or dumbbells, but everybody does kettlebells. Right. And it was just a tool in the toolbox that was more appropriate for some things, but not as appropriate as a dumbbell for others. And the way we described it in Tennessee was this: if you looked like a shoe and every eyelet was a component, speed, power, strength, fitness, work capacity, flexibility, range of motion, all the different things that we talk about, and each eyelet of the shoe was one of those. The kettlebell part was kind of the shoelace for us that integrated those things and made the shoe work. And so we talked about crossing the threshold of the weight room onto the field. And that was kind of the thing that it made sense to some of the guys. Well, then when I got to Central Michigan, we had them now at 18 years old. And so we could build it because you had time. So then we started back farther and progressed those movements, the big 6 essential ones, and just really hammered that for 4 or 5 years that we had those kids. And so with here, it's unique because now you get them even younger and you have more time to do it. And one thing here that I've noticed, it's not as intimidating for some kids as a bar is. And so if that's your inroad to get them to try something new, or to at least, give it a shot, then I'm all for that. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat, and some of the movements are really good. The one thing I liked at Central Michigan, they're portable, and we used to take them outside quite a bit because it was a way to, how Michigan goes, being up there in Ypsilanti, like when the weather's nice, man, everybody gets cabin fever. We wanted to get outside, and so we take those things all around campus and make the weight room outdoors, and the guys liked it, and I liked it, and we had a good time with it. But the versatility of it was really what I was attracted to. And it's just kind of grown from there, and try to show people some things if they're willing to learn it. And it's been amazing where I've seen people take that and the education I've gotten back from it.
100%. Yeah, those 5 days in Michigan, you got to take advantage of, right?
Man, you better, right? Lots of sunscreen, man, because they're pale as a ghost.
I think there's the big lesson there, and I love where you led with that is, you used it. It is a tool in the toolbox, and that's the way to look at it as a in a holistic manner. But it was also an icebreaker with your athletes, and a way for you to differentiate yourself amongst the staff. And I think I got back from San Francisco, working with a couple teams out there and talking to some staffs, and that was one of the things was like, when you're on a staff, if you're rank and file, where you're just, I've got my CSCS, I've got my master's degree, and I've got a couple years experience, and that's all you bring to the table, well, then you're easily replaceable, Right. But if you're the kettlebell guy or the speed guy or the sports science guy or the nutrition guy, whatever, then you bring another element and a niche to a staff that, that's marketable in some way.
Absolutely. Got to be able to add value to the place that you're at. And to, like, it goes back to what we talked about with your book and learning those business principles and stuff. You got to market yourself, and be able to add value where you're at and sell the value that you bring. And so whatever that may be on the staff that you're on.
Well, it allows you to build some authority too, right? So, because you became a guy that was, kind of viewed that way, guys like myself and others came to the Titans to learn from you, right? I mean, that was a way to kind of, to stand out even in the amongst your peers, which is also what you're trying to do. So I think it's great, man. Well, we end the show here with some resources. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
Okay, the best piece that I have used and I lean on every day, it was from Steve Watterson. And the first day I got to Tennessee in 2004, he said, as long as you believe the answer is never, it can't be done, we're going to get along just fine. And I have hung on that for 16 years now of the answer is never, it can't be done. The way he posed it to me, and the way it evolved over the years was either you don't know how to do it and you're too arrogant or stubborn to ask for help, or you're too lazy to go figure it out and find somebody that can help you. But either way, you're wrong. And when he said it that way, I was like, man, you can't be that guy. You can't do it. You got to be willing to ask for help, and you got to be willing to go ask for it and find the way, because he was so innovative. And I've been around so many guys that are, and I've learned so much from them. And that was the one, man. It can't be done. No, you just don't want to figure it out. And so that was the biggest thing that I've really kind of hung on since I started working for him.
I love it.
Doesn't that sound just like it, too? I mean, I can saying it every time I say it.
Well, I can see him saying that, actually.
Absolutely.
I always tell our staff, I'm like, what happened in 1969? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, we put a man on the moon. I'm like, if we can put a man on the moon, you can figure out how to train two teams at once, or you can figure out.
I can't believe you brought that up. All right, you ready for this? So you sent Paul Cipriano to me at Central Michigan. Outstanding coach, love him to death. The password to our iPad in the weight room was 1969 because of why? Because Coach Mack always said it's the year we put the man on the moon. That was the password when we were up there because of you.
Is that right?
Yeah, and Paul brought that, and that's exactly what he said. How about that?
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Give us a book, app, website recommendation.
Awesome. Okay, so the book I was able to hear at the IYCA Summit back in May. I heard Alan Stein talk there, and man, Raise Your Game, legitimate. I love it. It is outstanding because it really points the mirror at you and makes you ask really hard questions about yourself. I love it. And it's just, man, kudos to him for what he's written. It's been really helpful to me. And I really love that book, and it's been a big one. App wise, probably, not a new app to probably most listeners, but man, Coach's Eye is unreal for us. Everything athletes do, they watch film of themselves play, but they never see themselves in the weight room unless it's a reflection in the mirror. And the spark that goes off in kids when you show them the set they just did, man, they're all in. They love that stuff. And so that one has been a big one for us. And at a couple of different places I've been now. And I just love that because the kids, man, it's how they learn nowadays.
Agreed. Any websites?
Website, the one, again, probably not new, but it's the one that I just love it. The Ready State, formerly Mobility WOD, Kelly Starrett. I mean, I follow the app. I get all the podcasts. I do all that. It's game-changing information to me that really made me think differently about what we're doing. And he's just so smart, and he can talk simply to a dumb guy like me that I can understand it. And it was able to show up in our program. And it's just, it's one of those things that, two of those guys have no idea the influence they've had on programs I've been at. I've never met them, but their fingerprints are all over it. Yeah. And it's just really cool to me to be able to acknowledge that and tell people about it if they don't know it yet, because it's been really helpful to me.
No, both, yeah, great, fantastic. And You are far from done. One of the smartest guys I know, but also one of the most humble guys and all-time great guys in our profession, man. And just appreciate what you've done, how you've gone about your business, and just the friendship through the years, man. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Ron, for having me. I just really appreciate you. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.